Hello and welcome to Insights, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Always a pleasure to be here.
We plan to have a couple of conversations on this episode. First is to gauge the new projections in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. And then we will move on to talking about the realities of contemporary Nigerian writing. Elizabeth?
Well, because we now have a new cabinet on board, we will be analyzing some of the key policies of government now in terms of their long and short-term effects on Nigerians.
Very well then, let's get things started. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
National cash transfer is not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
My first guest is the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu. Thank you so much for joining me on Insight, Madam Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I suppose you have taken stock of what is on ground in terms of Nigerians living below the poverty threshold against what was done by the immediate past administration in terms of investment and lifting people out of poverty. I have a feeling that the projections you have just made or you have made are based on some of the findings that you already have. Can you perhaps let us into some of these findings and how they would they would form the basis, or they have formed the basis for the targets that you've set for yourself and for the ministry going forward?
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to elevating Nigerians from poverty, and this is in line with the SDG goals, which of course Goal 1 says that we should be able to eradicate poverty and poverty by 2030, and he's looking at a complete picture of ending poverty in Nigeria. It's an uphill task, it's not an easy one, but he's committed to it, and indeed the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation is committed to ending poverty in Nigeria. It's actually a multifaceted approach which will be deployed to ending poverty in our country. Of course, those indicators and those activities that we need to carry out will all be unveiled very soon to Nigerians so they can know. But in the meantime, for us as a ministry, we would be adopting and expanding some of the programs that was carried out by the past administration to cover more and more persons across board. And then we'll be bringing on board some very new, strong innovations that will help us mobilize resources to adequately address some of the issues across board. We're also going to be working on our social register to ensure that we have the right set of people on the database, people who truly deserve to be there. And remember, it's a dynamic register, so those who have gone beyond this social safety net point that needs to be on the register will be taken off. Those who are within, they would be given the right attention which they need, and those who need to be added as part of an update, working with the state and the local government, and of course some other key stakeholders like the traditional rulers, community leaders, and the religious leaders will be brought on board to ensure that we have a perfect or near perfect social register that Nigerians can truly own as theirs.
You know, you've just taken that question right off me. I mean, you preempted it. I wanted to. I hope you can hear me, Honorable Minister. Can you hear me clearly? Fantastic. You
Yes.
just preempted my question because I wanted to know how many of these targets would be anticipatory rather than reactionary And in terms of the cleanup of the social register, the national social register that you've talked about, I had wanted to know how exactly that would happen. Just so, or not so that it would only meet the approval of the National Economic Council, but the generality of Nigerians as well. You know what happened last time when Nigerians and a large portion of Nigerians felt they were being gaslighted by the national social register released by government at the time.
So all of those are the cleanups and housekeepings which we need to do. Remember that some fundings are actually ready from the World Bank to be sent out to individuals across the country. So this is what we'll quickly do: tidy it up, get all the key stakeholders on board so that they get to accept that that's what they know. And for some of them who say we can't identify the people, they are sure that these are real people with a thorough process going on, and they know the beneficiaries are those who should actually be on board. And once we get that done, we'll go into ensuring that everyone gets what is due them in a transparent manner. One thing which Nigerians can and should be looking out for is transparency and accountability in all that we do. Like I said, we're going to be looking at a whole lot: job creation, SMEs, and micro, small and medium scale enterprises would be supported across Nigeria. We're moving more from a certificate-based economy to a skilled economy by creating more job sets where people can be trained in academies, vocational skill training, of course, fabrication academy, and name it. And then these skills can be deployed into raising those small, medium, and micro, small and medium enterprises. Of course, beyond this, a lot of conditional cash transfers will happen, and the conditions attached to it will include education, so that we can keep more children in school and have less of the out of school children. We'll be looking at providing food to end hunger under the Zero Hunger Project. Would also be working on other very innovative things like the Humanitarian Trust Fund, where we'll be getting in mobilizing resources from across different spectrum to ensure that Nigerians can get the right resources to really intervene on any humanitarian issue or even help with the poverty alleviation issue. So a lot of these engagements were actually in a ground setting stage where we're trying to set the foundation right, listen to what has been done, and then pick out the positives, look at the negatives and why they happened that way, and then get recommendation and steps going forward. It's a rigorous process. We have been since Tuesday this week going through a very strenuous process with all the department units and personnel in the ministry to find out what they're doing and how we can do better. Next week we'll be engaging with the agencies that are under the ministry and seeing how best we can get everyone on track to do what we ought to do to meet target.
Honorable Minister, unfortunately we seem to be running out of time, but let's see if we can get you to take one more question before we let you go. And I'm quite excited because you appear to be hitting on some key indicators, and I mean, you mentioned hunger amongst children. There are profound humanitarian needs across Nigeria. I mean, there are those displaced from violence in addition to those lacking in basic services and protections. I mean, you've talked about this response plan, but you know, in your planning, for instance, how do you intend to deploy your experiences or experience in the medical field to tweak, you know, your humanitarian response plan to address an issue like severe acute malnutrition amongst children, which I hear is likely to double by year's end, according to a report by one of the UN agencies?
So, of course, in the humanitarian response, there are different aspects of it. Of course, beginning with the actual provision of sustainability for them, livelihood, health, wash program, name it. Nutrition is key to us to see that these children actually get the right food that they need to not just thrive, but actually carry out the basic things they need to do and go about their livelihood and economic seeking even in the society. So it's a 360 approach. We would be looking at children that are malnourished, children that have no access to food. Of course, the government has started by providing palliatives that have been distributed across the country to all the 36 states and FCT, and this would go on at a larger scale, and we will be targeting families that are living under $1.95 a day. So it's a deliberate action in a robust plan by government to reach out to the poorest of poor. Remember that poverty alleviation is actually linked to this, right? One of the key factors or indicators of poverty is inability to have access to good food and quality water and all of those infrastructures, right? So for us as a country, while we are addressing the issue of nutrition under the humanitarian aspect, we will also be addressing it under the poverty alleviation aspect. Nigeria is a country with lots of people who are malnourished. As we speak today, we have instances where over 16 million of Nigerians are affected in one way or the other by humanitarian crisis. And then amongst this, we have the critical states, which we refer to as the Bay states, which is Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, where we have about 8 million Nigerians that are affected and indeed displaced. And we have partners that are working with us, development partners in the field working with us, and we're trying to see that children, especially those who are under 5, get the right nutrition that they require to thrive. Remember, the formative years for a child is when the child is in the womb as a fetus, and then when the child is being born. The first 2 years of life will determine the child brain development and several other things. And when the child doesn't have access to food, then we have challenges managing these children through life.
Very true, Honourable Minister. Sorry to butt in here. I'm sorry to butt in here because we really need to go. My director is in my ear asking me to round off. But just very quickly, and this is something that that you put out there yourself. I am just wondering if it will not be a mistake to create the illusion that extreme poverty can indeed be eradicated in Nigeria. I mean, you put out a figure out there of taking 133 million Nigerians out of poverty within the timeline. I don't know that you disclosed. You know, a lot of Nigerians would take that not just with a pinch of salt, but with a heap of salt.
Nigerians signed on to the SDG goal, and the goal, one of it, which we all know, is to eradicate poverty, right, by 2030. So this 133 million persons are supposed to be reached by 2030. As a nation, after signing on to that, we cannot step back and say our target would be to eradicate poverty for 5 million people or 10 million people. We signed on to eradicating poverty under the SDG goals by 2030, and that we are committed to working assiduously to achieving.
All right, thank you so much, Honourable Minister. Oh, did I hear my director say I could take one more question? Oh, yes, he said I can take one more question before we go. Let's talk about the issue of capacity. We've talked about food insecurity, and now we have food deserts all across Nigeria. I am wondering, in reaching out to those impacted and affected, are you also, or do you plan to build capacity of these persons so that they are not just only able to rely, or rather rely solely on government handouts, but they develop capacity to also fend and provide for themselves?
That's very key for poverty alleviation. Very, very key. So we don't want them to be dependent even persons who are exposed to humanitarian crisis. We don't want them to be dependent on government intervention and handouts and all of those things, food provision. And that's why a core part of it is job creation, livelihood, and the rest of it. This would help them to get back on their feet while we work to reintegrate them back into society, fending for themselves and taking care of their economic needs. So we are not going to create dependence, but rather we are going to give them the net to go and fish so that they can cater for themselves and their families. And that's why a lot of emphasis is placed on women, helping women to get these skills and to get jobs. That way they can fend for their families and they go off the social register and go back into the normal flow.
Unfortunately, this is where we'll draw the curtain on our conversation, but hopefully we will be able to get you back into the studio and then push this conversation further. Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu. I mean, you are a friend of the media, you are an in-house friend here. We hope would, the relationship would continue, and hopefully one of these days, as you push ahead with your programs and targets for the ministry, you will take us along. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Moving ahead, I would like to talk about what constitutes Nigerian writing and basically the realities of contemporary Nigerian writing. Oftentimes, the focus of current Nigerian writing typically revolves around burning contemporary issues like corruption and governance, politics, inter-ethnic strife, religion, and a gamut of other issues as well. Topical issues, I should say. But even when writers, contend with treading that delicate balance of depicting and stretching reality, it is believed that Nigerian writing or writers are particularly rich in language, content, phrases, trends, and even structure across all genre. Well, joining me to further this conversation is Ben Ijoma Adigwe, lawyer and writer, author of several published books, and also several collections of poems as well. He joins me via Zoom from Asaba, Delta State. Thank you for joining me, Barrister. I think your audio is muted. You might have to open it so we'd hear you. But anyways, I think we should begin. Yes, thank you so much. It's on now. I can hear you. I think we should begin with the basic underpinnings of what constitutes Nigerian writing. But in defining what has now become Nigerian writing and how that readily lent itself to our realities, I am curious about how our realities or things around us creates usable material for writers like yourself, and yet remain a burden for the Nigerian writer, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. How deeply ingrained is that conflict for a writer like yourself who needs to speak to contemporary issues, yet understands their limitations?
Yes. The society gives you something to work on to inspire you to write. But there are challenges in that environment. People don't read too much, first and foremost. And people write, a lot of people write, and publishing, going to getting a publishing house to accept the work and push it over there. It's quite challenging. But with determination, one could get there and achieve the goal as a writer.
Yeah, I understand when it comes to writing and people not appreciating the material and all, but that is the reception you get for material you put out there. I am actually asking about yourself, you yourself as the writer, and how conflicted you can be sometimes, because yes, the material, or rather the society or reality around you supplies you with the material to write, and yet certain things in society also challenges you in that yes, it's a material, but there's a delicate line between what you can say and what you can't say. So I just wanted to know how often you get conflicted or you're embroiled or engulfed in this conflict. as a writer?
Yeah, as a writer, you have to weigh into many things. First and foremost, the certain limits that the law allows you, talking about the law now, you have to be careful not to go beyond the law, coming to, I think, defaming somebody, for instance. And talking too much before someone out there with authoritative gets at you back. But I think the atmosphere in the country is a good one to inspire any writer, because going through history of writing, the best of writings came from very difficult circumstances, economic, political, and all sorts. Even the episode of St. Paul, very important one, most important episodes he wrote. He wrote them from the Roman prison. And the challenging atmosphere in Nigeria is enough to inspire any writer.
You know, it is interesting that you combine your law practice. I mean, you just referenced the law. Now you combine your law practice with writing. And even though I just started on one of your books, that's the one titled Peculiar Crimes from Africa, a prosecutor's adventures. I am intrigued by the style you deployed or utilized in the 83-page narrative, if I'm not mistaken. It appears to combine creativity and realism within our jurisprudence to speak to the rather pervasive, or rather not pervasive, pervasive nature of crimes, which society otherwise considers bizarre. For instance, and this is just an example, you looked at an issue like a son raping his own biological mother because a diviner had assured him that it would end all of his economic woes. What does that say of today's Nigerian society and the craze for materialism, and now setting diabolical practices fast catching on among young adults distorts good values? I need you to put your analysis within the context of your writing and the law's retroactive response to issues like that.
Yes, thank you. The environment is quite harsh, economically speaking. The situation in the country gives one an impression that making a good living is somehow esoteric. And most of our youth out of school are without job, some are unemployed or unemployed. You see things like the Yahoo factor, Yahoo, and all that, Yahoo Plus, people go into rituals. And you see, under the social contract theory, propounded by the people like Rousseau, the individuals, the society surrenders its right to leaders, who in turn are supposed to provide good living, good environment. Now, when that is not produced, there's a breakdown, and people just think they could take things into their hands. That instance you mentioned in my book, Peculiar Crimes from Africa, happened in a case I prosecuted. Like you rightly said, the man was having so much difficulty economically. According to him, he went to the witch doctor, what we call a native doctor, who down through divination, oracles, and all that, told him that the surest way to come out of his difficulty was to rape his mom. So there you are, on a certain day, he was in the farm with his mom, and he raped her. It was a quite nauseating experience. In fact, when the matter was called upon in court, the judge put myself to people. It was a horrendous situation.
I can
We
imagine.
didn't know how to, a very, very horrendous. We didn't know how to relate with it. It was a nasty. It was nasty. But again, it speaks.
Yes, please go ahead. Let me allow you.
Again, it speaks volume of. It speaks volumes of the situation in the country. People are disillusioned. And even these youths that go into the internet for, they call Yahoo Yahoo. Another aspect of it they call Yahoo Yahoo Plus, where they go into rituals and all that. Because in their opinion, in their own view, trying to make a decent living normally, in a normal way, seems to be impossible. I mean, the situation where the minimum wage can not even buy a bag of rice. I think it's a desperate situation.
You know, I read that book. Like I said, I'm yet to be done with it because I only started. In fact, I only started just a couple of hours ago to read the book. But I'm a fast reader. I should be able to finish it in the next day or two. You know, I noticed that you also did reference in the same book, you know, issues that bordered on the supernatural as well as deadly superstitions. You talked about witchcraft, witchcraft practices, and but most especially how he speaks, or they all speak to, you know, or rather the implication, their implication in criminal law in Nigeria. But then, you know, and this is the thing, Nigeria, well, like most parts or many parts of Africa, remain a land of extreme contrast between indigenous communities that have assimilated modern social cultural practices and those who still hold on to these trado-cultural practices of their forebears. Well, I am from Ila. We are deeply cultural. I can tell you my people still worship the god of iron, Ogun, you know, there in Delta State. You know, these conflicts, you know, leads me to this question that I would like to ask you. While government develops the legal, social, and economic institutions to bring the more backward elements into harmony with the demands of 21st century industrialized societies, to what extent is the criminal law sufficient to accomplish these changes? Drawing from what you've written in your book.
Yes, you see, basically, our received English law is based on the viewpoint of the West, the Western viewpoint. And this is imposed on, so to speak, on us who also have our own traditional African viewpoints. And these viewpoints are quite different and contrasting. As they clash sometimes in these viewpoints is you notice it play out in criminal law. For instance, superstition. Our people are highly superstitious. Quite some time, Africa has been quite a superstitious place to be in. And we believe in superstition. And the law does not believe to a very large extent in that. For instance, a man might, through superstitious belief, and get provoked. For instance, in one of those cases, somebody was provoked because a man came and threatened him that he would deal with him and threw a little calabash in front of his house. At night, his son suddenly woke up, jumped up from the sleep, screamed. Daddy, held his arm to his tummy. But the dad woke up, grabbed a bottle of holy water, poured it on the boy, poured it on the boy. He said, Jack, the boy died. So the next morning, his relatives came to commiserate with him on hearing of the death of his son. And this man that threatened him was also part of his enlarged kingsmen from the same ethnic nationality. He too came, and they all sat down, commiserated with the man. And according to the accused person, who was the man whose son died, the man himself who threw that calabash suddenly made this gesture. And in her society and culture, that means that, yeah, I told you I would do that. So the father suddenly fled up, went into his room, got out a machete and butchered him. So the father, and he died. So brought to the hospital and he died.
So the point is,
Well,
to what extent is the criminal law effective in arresting some of these practices and clearing doubts when it comes to issues like superstition?
yes, the criminal law, like I'm telling you now, does not, I mean, it arrests that in that it does not, the criminal law as it stands now does not give credence to superstitious beliefs. Like I was trying to say in that piece,
Yes.
is it a principle of law that when you are uh, provoked reasonably, somebody offers you a lot of provocation. Under that circumstances, another factor you could the punishment for and your child it could be reduced to manslaughter, saying no, this man was provoked, so it wasn't premeditated murder. So, but in any case, when this man killed a man during the trial, his defense counsel is the defense of provocation. And I argued that no, the law as it stands does not come to terms regard provocation and superstition belief as part of provocation. In this case, that somebody came and threw calabash to your to your
Does
doorstep
not,
and your
yes,
child died.
does not give you
Actually,
the leeway to
actually,
machete the person to death.
uh, and the court agreed that I mean superstition. That's superstition. It's no business of the court that calabash caused you to be angry. No. That's not such one of those that is envisaged by our law.
You know,
And
yes.
when the Supreme Court said no, it's not provocation because superstitious belief you can't grant provocation and you're mere superstitious. So the law adequately provides to check such practices, but yet again you can't deny that these superstitious beliefs and culture are ingrained in our traditional society.
Let me allow me tie all of these bizarreness and conflict, in identity to another piece of work that you have. It's one of your collection of poems. This one is titled "The Spoils of War." I'd like to read. I would like to read a piece from the collection titled "An Advice." It goes thus: "O unborn child, pray your Creator never sent you to that pandemonium that's called Africa, the palace of Belial, to contend with forces beyond your frail power, powers ready to seize you from your first cry and turn you to a child laborer." Do you want to complete it? Do you want to finish it for us?
No, finish it. Complete it
Okay.
yourself.
To live like a monk, sand food, water, and clothes, amidst men and brethren who smile like hyenas and sharks, whose handshakes are drawn daggers, and be roasted at will by fierce phobos. Pray, O innocent child, proclaim a fast that your Creator sent you not to that cradle called Africa. I mean, this is laden with criticism and dripping satire. Sometime in 2000, I remember The Economist referred to the African continent or to Africa as the hopeless continent. But of course, between 2000 and 2011, he then changed that narrative and called our continent Africa Rising. And even though your poem is more recent in your panoramic writer view, you still do seem to have this dark view of the continent. Why is that so?
No, you must understand that the poems in that collection, the poems that were written over a long period of time. I'm sure that poem was written far back when things were very, very bad. I mean, you must understand that it's quite challenging up in Africa. It's quite challenging. And before President Obasanjo came in as President of Nigeria, when he won the elections, and he was being asked, what are your agenda? Well, and he said one of them is to get the people living wage. Then he had a niece who is a civil servant. And when he asked her, what was your salary? He said he was shocked at what he heard. He now asked her, how are you surviving with that kind of salary? It was a mess. And I'm talking about things like 2,000 naira a month as a then. I mean, he said one of the things we're going to come to do was to give a living wage, to servants. And that sort of change at least brought something that looked like decency in that realm. And it's quite challenging being, especially an average African, it's quite challenging.
Well, but like I
So,
said, the economists described Africa as rising. I mean, there are countries blazing the trail right now, Rwanda, and some other countries. Well, starting with Nigeria, yeah. I mean, things are bad, but we're rising as a continent and making some way. I'd like to thank you so much, Ben Ijoma Adibwe, lawyer and writer. By the way, did I hear right when it was said that late South African president, activist and human rights icon Nelson Mandela autographed one of your poems? Is that correct?
yes, it is.
Fantastic. Well, keep doing the good work, and I'm sure your light will continue to shine. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Governance drives development. Good governance ensures that priorities are based on extensive consensus in society and that the voices of the most vulnerable are heard in decision-making over allocation of development resources. With a new administration on board, actors in the political landscape of the nation believe that Nigeria is on the right path to economic prosperity, with the new initiatives rolled out by the present administration. Today, we will analyze some of the efforts made so far to better the standard of living of Nigerians, and my guest, Engineer Abubakar Abdulhamid Sadiq, will speak to us. He is the Director General, Northwest Advocates for Tinubu Shetima Ticket. Engineer Sadiq, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you, Lizzie.
All right, your group played a significant role in ensuring that the Tinubu Shetima Ticket ruled at the polls. Let me ask you, what was the drive? Development, continuity, or interest?
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Honestly, what drives the motive is development and continuity, honestly. Because as you can see from the very first day, even from the campaign, we've analyzed the blueprint of President Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu and Kashim Shettima. And we're okay with it, and it's a very good policies that he brought during the campaign, which we were motivated and think when he have the chance, he will impact in the life of Nigerians. And it's, as we can see, from the very first day he assumed office, he hit the ground running, starting from the removal of fuel subsidy, down to different policies, among which some policies were meant to cushion the effect of the removal of that fuel subsidy. Provision of palliatives, and they've started rolling out measures in order to cushion those effects, starting from the switching or providing an alternative. Since the fuel price has gone higher, then they thought of an alternative for that fuel, which is the compressed natural gas, to be used as in place of petrol, where the IPMAN have even rolled out measures in order to start converting our vehicles and other machineries to the use of CNG, where it's cheaper, environmental friendly, and so on. It was said that the CNG will roll at a rate of 100 to 110 naira, which is far cheaper than petrol. And a liter of that CNG will travel your vehicle for 25 to 30 kilometers. So at least little by little, by rolling out these measures, when they have rolled them out completely, Nigerians will be at ease by God's grace, and they will celebrate this bold step taken by the administration of Asiwaju.
Okay. All right, talking about initiatives, a couple of initiatives have been rolled out, the student loan as well. So now let's have an assessment from you.
Yeah, it's a big step taken in order to enable the less privileged have access to education, because it's not a news that different people want to have access to education, but the funding is what distances them from that right, because education is a right. So this government ruled out this initiative in order to enable the less privileged have access to education through accessing loan, which they are going to pay 2 years after graduation. And it is expected that 2 years after graduation, person must have secured a job or something doing. And with that, you start paying the loan 2 years after your graduation. So in which your source of income, you're going to report your source of income to the government, and you're going to, if you are not employed, if you are an independent entrepreneur, you're going to provide your total earning, and you're going to be paying 10% of that your total income in a month. So with this, you will be able to pay all the necessary loan you have acquired to cater for your education.
Okay, since we are talking about initiatives by the present administration, now before we talk about inclusivity, youth inclusivity, Africa is faced with several challenges, from diverse impact of climate change, increasing water scarcity, natural disasters, energy crisis. These are just few of them. How do we surmount these problems? Now let's relate it to Nigeria.
Well, climate change, especially what is facing Nigeria currently, especially the northern part of Nigeria, is the issue of desertification, desert encroachment. And climate change, due to that, is one of the reasons why this present administration wants to start enrolling the CNG, the use of CNG, because this fossil fuel combustion from engines and cars are damaging the ozone layer, thereby bringing a climate change that it's not friendly to the environment, the harsh weather, and so on. So the embarking on afforestation, that is planting of trees to cater for the desert encroachment, and the moving from petrol to the use of CNG will go a long way in order to cater or to reduce the effect of this climate change.
That's very true. All right, and you know, Africa largely depends on natural resources, and to achieve development, we have to fully harness these natural resources. Are we utilizing the gift of nature to us?
With the previous administration exploring that embarked on exploring natural resources, this government is doing more, because I think he will do better, he will do more, so as to explore the solid minerals in the country and to explore the petroleum and other resources, because this administration for Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu will seriously embark on the exploration of natural resources, solid minerals, and the rest. So we are going towards the right direction in this respect.
We are going towards the right direction.
Yeah.
All right, back to my first question on the issue of inclusivity. Really, let me take it from your own perspective. Why have you taken it upon yourself to be a vanguard in including youth in governance?
Yes, I pick interest in this movement right from the very first day Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu emerged. The right choice of picking the Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, and what we are aiming now is to deliver the dividends of democracy to Nigerians as we promised, and by God's grace, we will do that.
Okay. All right. Before we take up other issues. Now, you are youth, you are young, and then you have the zeal and the doggedness to enforce, to see people thrive, to see other young people like you engage in government, engage in governance rather. Why are other youths like you not taking advantage of platforms to be involved?
Well, I will start by, at this juncture, I will start by commending President Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu for including youth in his government. It's the government that includes youth the most ever in the history of this country, because as we can see from the list of ministers released, we can see the reasonable amount of youth contained in that list. I would like to call upon youths like me to find something, because you can't just join politics without bringing something on board. You cannot be following. You have to bring something to add value to the system. Like what I did, we did our very best towards actualizing this dream. So you can't just join politics by just saying I'm a politician or I'm interested. What will you do? You have to start something. Yes, you have to bring something new. And after that, you have to have a vision. After success, what do you want to offer? Like for me now, I've submitted a list of proposals that we've campaigned with. So I have a vision that when this government comes on board, this is what I want the government to do for the youth. I've made that proposal and submitted. So youth have to have focus. You have to participate in the process. Then if the process succeeds, then what do you want to contribute towards the actualizing of the dream of that government? So that is what youth should focus on.
And that's a very big question every youth out there should work towards answering. Now, a new cabinet has been formed. So many expectations. Now we have ministers. Nigerians have expectations. Regarding critical sectors, what would be your expectations?
Yeah, honestly, we're expecting that these ministers will help to actualize the renewed hope agenda of President Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, because they are competent, they are capable, regardless of what the people are saying or the noisemakers are saying. They are competent, because taking a look at the various sectors in which ministers are appointed, wherever you go, you will find out that those ministers are up to the task. Some of them are former governors, some of them are former ministers, some of them have different experience in different capacities that qualified them. It took the president days brainstorming in order to come up with this list. And I'm sure and hopeful that these ministers will help the president to actualize the renewed hope agenda
of the nation. Okay, my final question to do is still on youth development. Are we faring well in developing the potential of the Nigerian youth?
Well, under the current
because
administration,
this is the month we celebrate all the youth globally, and we're actually promoting the green economy.
Yes, honestly, we are, but slowly but surely we'll reach the destination. It is clear that Nigeria, out of the over 220 citizens of this country, over 70% of the population of Nigeria are youth. So it is a must to the government to embark seriously towards youth development by initiating different programs that will empower the youth, give them access to education, because education is the key to success. You have to have education. You have to have, apart from having home training, education is the key to success. So we can say that the future of this country lies on the shoulders of its youth, because in the coming years, the leaders of tomorrow are the youth of this country. With the youth occupying over 70% of the population, we are sure that Nigerian youth will strive for good governance and will perform better. Here they are in the ministerial appointments that are just released. We are hopeful that they will show to Nigerians that we, the youth, are up to the task, and we will do it. We will achieve it. And after that, by God's grace, we will climb the mount of leadership at all respect, by God's grace.
All right, Engineer Abubakar Abdulhamid Sadiq, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Inside this week. Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you very much, Lizzie.
Thank you so much.
Amina Mohammed, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Agencies and stakeholders to proactively tackle these challenges.
Women in most countries of the world constitute about 50% of registered voters.
Williams, reporting for Dateline 360.
In Jos, Caleb Gochin, Dateline 360.
Naja'atu Tijani.
Dateline 360. Chidi Okrafo.
For Dateline 360.
In Lagos, Michael Olaleye.
Reporting for Dateline 360.
I am Omotola Omojola. Thanks for tuning in to Dateline 360.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Odiko.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. See you next week. Bye for now.